Let us today study about generic English, third sem BBA. The lesson is Bob Marley's Redemption Song, the meaning of the lyrics. Arguably more so than any other popular musician of the late 20th century, Bob Marley was perceived by his fans as being a prophet. And it is songs such as Redemption Song which helped him earn such a reputation. No, this is not to imply that the lyrics predict the future. Rather, it is John Bob's ability to analyze the times from the standpoint of his oppressed people in conjunction with his understanding of the book, the Bible, which gives lyrics such a good feel, love for humanity, devotion for God. It was indeed a harrowing ordeal both in transit and destination, one in which the narrator and those like him should not have survived and thrived. Yet, via divine intervention, he and his people are still able to move forward triumphantly. Chorus. Meanwhile, in the consequent chorus, Bob Marley likens redemption songs to songs of freedom, and all things considered, the latter reads like a reference to Negro spirituals of old, which in their own way helped carry black people through slavery. Indeed, the singer says that these tunes are all he ever had, and that further alludes to the notion that they, like his belief in the Almighty, are an act of faith. Or stated otherwise, he and his people were cast into a position where they had nothing to lean in terms of being optimistic for the future. The only thing they had was their faith, which was often expressed through song. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever have, redemption songs. Second chapter. At the beginning of the second verse is where Bob Marley's channels are aforementioned Marcus Garvey with the famous Emancipation Yourself from Mental Slavery line. Marcus Garvey was an early 20th century black leader and holds the distinction, even up to a century later, of leading the largest mass movement in African American history. He is also recognized as the founder of Rastafarianism, the religion which Bob Marley adhered to, even though he did not sport dreadlocks himself. And the aforementioned quote centered on Garvey's basically putting the onus on his people to free their own minds as they had already been, rather freshly freed from physical bondage of slavery. Thus, Marley is putting forth a similar idea that it is up to them to emancipate themselves from being held down by a detrimental mode of thinking, which can be further said to have been picked up during the days of slavery. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, because none of them can stop the time. He then goes to the address what was actually a hot topic in popular music during the early 1980s, the prospect of nuclear war. He knows that most people are utterly and completely powerless in the face of such, but still he is telling them to have no fear. He is confident of this because of a prophetic idea that basically reads like what will be. In other words, yes, the leaders of the world may possess the wherewithal to construct world destroying weapons, but ultimately they are just playing their role in the divine grand scheme of things. Third chapter. He then issues what would likely be a reference to Martin Luther King 1929-1968, Malcolm 10 1925-1965, and other slain black leaders as well as perhaps Jesus himself. In terms of them being martyrs, but more to the point, Bob expresses anguish, one may even say disgust at the idea that in the wake of their killings, the people whom they served just stand aside the loop. He then concludes the verse pointing once again to the divine scheme of things. And in the regard, he is no longer judging the people for being passive. Rather, he more or less concludes that the death of such individuals, as well as lack of reason of the people, is also the fulfillment of prophecy, so to speak. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Yes, some say it is just a part of it. We have got to fulfill the book. Conclusion. So conclusively, redemption song is very prophetic in nature, as will be elaborated on in this post final section. Marley put it together during a time when his own death was imminent. That maybe he dedicates a good portion of it to looking not only into future but also the past, even if he does so macrocosmically. This is on the top of fact that some of the wording has been derived from the teachings of Marcus Garvey. It is worth noting that Garvey himself is seen by many as the greatest black prophet of the early 20th century. Meaning of the lyrics of Redemption Song. The lyrics actually start off in the past with Bob making a reference to the transatlantic slave trade. For readers who are not aware of this movement of history, it marks an era in which millions of Africans were exported out of the motherland primarily to serve as chattel slaves in the Western Hemisphere. Old pirates, yes, they rob I to the merchant ships minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit.